Welcome friends, welcome to the session on Ministry of Education Part 2. In this session we'll be discussing about the next few topics that is there in the under the Ministry of Education. This is provided in the Vision IAS booklet on government schemes. So in the first part of Ministry of Education, we have seen few of the topics as in STARS project, that is strengthening teacher learning and results for states. Then we had seen PMRF, Prime Minister Research Fellowship Program, Midday Meal Scheme, that is MDM, NISHTA, that was National Initiative for School Heads and Teachers Holistic Advancement. And then we had also done the Samagra Shiksha. What was Samagra Shiksha? It was an integrated scheme for school education. For the entire school education, but it also consists of the preschooling also. Nishta was meant for the school heads and teachers, that is principals and teachers of elementary schooling. Midday meal scheme, we had seen this was an old scheme, but still we had seen few of the new provisions that were under this. PMNRF was a 7 years project, and under this research fellowship is given to students. Okay, few of the changes were done there also. And START was strengthening teacher learning and results for states. It was to monitor and do the measurement activities so that they are efficiency in the Indian school education system is good. Okay, so next we'll be doing the from point number 6, that is SSA Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and let's carry forward. So Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan objective is universal elementary education access and retention. So under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, it is universal elementary education access and retention. So they should have access to it as well as they can retain it. As the name suggests, it's a program that is mainly targeted for education for all. That is bridge. It also its objective is also bridging of gender and social category gaps, enhancement of learning levels of children. So it has three objectives. One is universal elementary education access and retention, bridging of gender and social category gaps in education, enhancement of learning levels of children. Beneficiaries children between 6 to 14 years of age group. So that is, it is covered under fundamental right to education, that is article 21A, wherein it says that it shall be the duty of the state to provide elementary education to all the children of the country. Salient features from 2018-19, this scheme has been subsumed under Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. We have read about Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. It is an integrated sub-scheme for education. So, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is under Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, a flagship program which includes variety of interventions like opening of new schools, construction of toilets, Swachha Vidyalaya campaign, separate toilets for girls and boys in schools, and periodic teacher training and academic resource support. There are various sub-programs under Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. One is Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat, then Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan, then we have Vidyanjali and Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya. So, we see that Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is under Samagra Shiksha integrated scheme. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has a few components. One is Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat. So what is Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat? It is a centrally sponsored scheme implemented to support the states or union territories for universalization of elementary education. Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat is for universalization of elementary education. The objective of this program are to promote early reading in classes 1 and 2 and writing with comprehension skills in children and also basic numeracy skills. That is to promote early reading, writing with comprehensive skills. The two tracks of the program are early reading and writing with comprehension ERWC, early reading and writing with comprehension, and early mathematics. Okay, as a follow-up, National Reading Initiative was launched to develop and promote the habit of reading among students in elementary schools, thereby extending the program up to class 8. So, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, first it Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat, first it promotes early schooling, that is classes 1 and 2's early reading and writing with comprehensive skills, but now it has been followed up with National Reading Initiative, in which reading habits are improved up to class 8. An annual library grant has been provided in all government schools. So all government schools are provided with annual library grant. Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan It is a subcomponent of both Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and RMSA. So both SSA and RMSA, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, is under Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Okay, so it was launched in 2015. Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan was launched in 2015 to motivate and engage children of the age group from 6 to 18 years in science, mathematics and technology through observation, experimentation, inference drawing, model building, that is both through inside and outside classroom activities. So it not only includes inside classroom activities but also through outside classroom activities. Now, in a sense, here the innovation is development through innovation that we have studied under PMRI, PM Prime Minister National Research Fellowship. Under that, we have seen that development through innovation was trying to be inculcated in the students of this country. So it would boost Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan would boost that Abhiyan. Why? Because from the right from childhood, students would be taught to engage themselves in science, mathematics and technology. It was introduced in 2015-16 and it is a subcomponent of both SSA and RMSA. Okay, so it is for 6 to 18 years, whereas Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan was for 6 to 14 years. Right? See, you can see here, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is between 6 to 14 years of age from all backgrounds, but Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan, although subcomponent under this, but it covers 6 to 18 years of group up to class 12. Mentoring by institutes like IITs, IIMs, IISCRs and other central universities and reputed organizations through innovative programs, student exchanges. Okay, it is a step to promote scientific temper and inquiry following the fundamental duty under Article 51A. So under Article 51A, it is one of the fundamental duty of ourselves that we need to promote our scientific temper and inquiry. So it would be a step forward towards fulfilling that fundamental duty. Intended beneficiaries, students in the age group of 6 to 18 years in government schools, Kendriya Vidyalayas, special schools, special training centers, etc. Schools going students from 1 to 12 in sciences. So it is in sciences. Vidyanjali program. Vidyanjali is a school volunteer program, is an initiative to enhance community and private sector involvement in government run elementary schools across the country under the overall aegis of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So Vidyanjali is also under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So far we have seen about Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat, then we have seen about Ek Bharat, then we have seen about Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan, and now it is Vidyanjali. Vidyanjali is a school volunteer program and it is an initiative to enhance community. So it would involve the community and private sector so that government run elementary schools can have better access to teachers or you can say mentors. Right. This program has been envisaged to bring together people willing to volunteer their service at schools which really need them. So people would volunteer in schools, like there would be volunteers who can teach. Volunteers will act as mentors, confidants and communicators with the children. So what would be the purpose of these volunteers? They would act as mentor, confidants and communicators with the children. Beneficiaries, children of government school, government aided school, etc. Standard 1st to 8. So Vidyanjali program is again for classes 1 to 8 in government and government aided school, where volunteers from all across can contribute their themselves can contribute their work towards these school volunteer programs. It is under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Then we have Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas. It was launched in 2004. So Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas was launched in 2004 for setting up of residential schools at upper primary level for girls belonging predominantly to the SC, ST, OBC and minorities in difficult areas. So who are the beneficiaries? Girls of upper primary level, they would get residential facilities, and which girls are included? They are predominantly from SC, ST, OBC and minorities in difficult areas. The scheme is being implemented in educationally backward blocks of the country where the female rural literacy is below the national average and gender gap in literacy is above the national average. So, two things are to be remembered here. It is implemented in educationally backward blocks wherein female literacy is below the national average and the gender gap in literacy is above the national average. Okay, scheme provides for minimum reservation of 75% of the seats for girls belonging to SC, ST, OBC or minority communities, and priority for the remaining 25% is accorded to girls from families below poverty line. So, which girls can take admission in Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas? The scheme says minimum reservation of 75%. 75% would be reserved for girls belonging to SC, ST, OBC and minority communities, and 25% and would be accorded to girls belonging to families which are under BPL. Okay. Now, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan (RMSA). Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan we have seen in the chart in part 1 where we discussed Ministry of Education. In that chart, funnel like shape figure we have seen Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and school teachers education. Teacher education was a part of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Now, RMSA Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, we see it is also a we can say that it is also a component of Sarva Shiksha, Samagra Shiksha. The scheme envisages achieving a gross enrollment ratio of 75% from the 52.6% in 2005-6 for classes 9 to 10 within 5 years of its implementation by providing a secondary school within reasonable distance of any habitation. So we have seen that in the rural areas, schooling, access to school was a very tough job. So under Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, what it was seen that to whoever was reading till class 8 under fundamental rights, there were act according to which there were schools wherein free education was provided to them. But for class 9 and 10, generally students did not have as such infrastructure near to their houses, so they used to drop out. Now through this scheme, it is intended that within 5 years of implementation of the scheme, the target was to achieve 75% of gross enrollment ratio. And how it would be achieved? By setting up a secondary school within certain reasonable distance of any habitation. So it would improve the quality of education imparted at secondary level by making all secondary schools conform to prescribed norms. Also the secondary schools that would be set up or is already set up, they have to conform to some prescribed norms, and through this the quality of education would be improved. Remove gender, socio-economic and disability barriers, provide universal access to secondary level education, enhance and universalize retention by 2020. So universalized retention by 2020. So here the target is 2020. Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, universalized retention, enhance and universalize retention by 2020. So this is one thing, one data is here, gross enrollment ratio to be increased to 75% from earlier 52.6% for classes 9 and 10 by setting up of secondary schools. Once secondary schools are set up, it would be seen that they should conform to certain laws or prescribed norms and thereby improving the quality of education. It would remove gender gap, socio-economic and disability barriers, and universal access to education would be provided through it. Also universal retention by 2020. What is the salient features of it? It is a flagship scheme. It to enhance access to secondary education and improve its quality by providing a secondary school within reasonable distance of every home. Physical facilities, additional classrooms are given, laboratories, libraries, art and crafts room, toilet blocks, drinking water provisions, residential hostels would be provided for teachers in remote areas. So in remote areas, residential hostels for teachers would also be provided because it would be helpful for those teachers who come from far off distance so that they can devote their maximum time to the upliftment of the student. Quality interventions, appointment of additional teachers to reduce PTR to 30:1. PTR is pupil teacher ratio. That is number of teachers available for certain students. Certain number of students. It is 30:1. That is for every 30 students there should be one teacher. Focus on science, math and English education. Okay, in service training of teachers would also be given. Science laboratories, ICT enabled education, curriculum reforms and teaching learning reforms. So whatever we see here, you can see that digital education or ICT based education, science and technology, laboratories has been the core theme in any of the schemes that has been brought forward by the government right from beginning. Equity interventions is special focus in micro planning preference to ashram schools. So here under the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, preference to ashram schools for upgradation. Upgradation was provided, was encouraged. Preference to areas with concentration of SC/ST minority for opening schools. So for SC/ST minority, there would be preference given for opening schools. Special enrollment drive for the weaker section, more female teachers in schools, and separate toilet block for girls. So what we see that under physical facilities, classrooms, laboratories, craft room, toilets were provided. In quality interventions, additional teachers were taken. Pupil teacher ratio was decreased. Focus was given on science, math, English education in service. Training of teachers were also given, and focus on digital education also. Equity interventions, micro planning was focused at. For upgradation of ashram schools was preferred. Schools were to be set up where concentration of SC/ST or minority children are there. Special enrollment drive for the weaker section is also there. Also more number of female teachers in schools, and a separate toilet block for girls. Project monitoring system to enhance efficiency and manage the implementation of RMSA. So we have seen right from the STARS program that we have seen initially while starting with this, it was to monitor and measure the Indian school education system. Here also in Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, we had seen that it has one of the component as to enhance the efficiency through monitoring or implementation of any of the schemes. Here also Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, to enhance the efficiency and manage implementation, there is a project monitoring system. Okay. Now Rashtriya Uchchara Shiksha Abhiyan. We have read about RMSA, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. Now we are reading about Rashtriya Uchchara Shiksha Abhiyan. Under RMSA, it was still Madhyamik level or class 10 level, for focused at improving the secondary school and also setting up of schools for 9 and 10 students. It aims to usher transformative reforms in the state higher education system by creating a facilitating institutional structure for planning and monitoring at the state level. Promoting autonomy in state universities and improving governance in institutions. So here we see Uchchara Shiksha Abhiyan for state higher education. That higher education for promoting better higher education, it would facilitate infrastructure, institutional structure that would be monitored at the state level. Also it would promote autonomy to state universities and also governance in the institution. So it's not just at the school level but also autonomy, but also at the university level. Correct regional imbalances in access to higher education. So in access to higher education, we used to previously see that only students from a particular area, urban area, used to get certain benefits. So there would be a urban-rural divide. So to correct that, these regional imbalances in accessing higher education, Rashtriya Uchchara Shiksha Abhiyan was introduced. It is to create an enabling atmosphere in the higher education institutions to devote themselves to research and innovations. Research and innovations was also taken care of. Expand the institutional base by creating additional capacity in existing institutions and establishing new institutions. So it would create additional capacity in existing institutions and also establish new institutions. Improve equity in higher education by providing adequate opportunities of higher education to SC/STs and socially and educationally backward classes. Equity would be improved by providing higher education facilities to SC/STs and socially and educationally backward classes. What were the salient features? It is launched in 2013 and is a centrally sponsored flagship scheme aimed at providing strategic funding to eligible state higher educational institutions. So, launched in 2013 as a centrally sponsored scheme for providing better infrastructure or strategic development or strategic funding to eligible state higher educational institutions. The central funding would be norm-based and outcome dependent. So, how would the center divide this funding basis? The center would fund based on norm-based and outcome dependent. It is proposed to improve the gross enrollment ratio to 30% by 2020. Under Rashtriya Uchchara Shiksha Abhiyan, gross enrollment ratio is to be gross enrollment ratio to be increased to 30% by 2020. That is, students entering colleges to be increased to 30% by 2020, and scheme will give priority to aspirational districts. Aspirational districts is a program by Niti Aayog. So Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, it's at the school level, secondary level. Rashtriya Uchchatra Shiksha Abhiyan for the state higher educational level, to improve higher education in the state. It is focusing on giving proper infrastructure, bridging the social gap, in fact gender gap, also the improving equity. SCs, and socially and educationally backward classes were to be given opportunities. Research and innovations would be taken care of. Regional imbalances would also be corrected through it. It was launched in 2013, centrally sponsored scheme. What would center devote? Center would give funding based on two methods. One is norm based and one is outcome based. That means if something is dependent on outcome, then there would be proper monitoring. Once there is proper monitoring, that means the universities would comply to certain reforms, and thereby it would change their system, and accordingly they would comply to the educational standards of the center or the state. So this is mainly for state higher educational, so it would comply to the state norms. Gross enrollment ratio to be increased to 30% by 2020, and priority is given to aspirational districts. But if we see Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, in that case the gross enrollment ratio was to be increased to 75% for class 9 and 10. Okay, gross enrollment ratio to be increased to 75% from 2005 and 6 by 2020. It is also by 2020, within 5 years of implementation. And here 2000 RUSA, it was in 2013, and again by 2020 it's 30%. Okay, transformative reforms in the state higher education institution. How transformation to be brought about in a state higher education system? It is conforming to norms and standards of adoption of accreditation as a mandatory quality assurance framework. So by compulsory accreditation, they would comply to the norms, and once they comply to the norms, quality education would usher in. Promoting autonomy in state universities. Okay, autonomy to be given to state universities. Ensure reforms in the affiliation, academic and examination system. So reforms to be brought about in affiliation, education system, examination systems also, and academics also. Ensure adequate availability of quality faculty. So today we have read about, first we have read about Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan we have read about 4 things. What were those 4 things? It was first we had under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat. Then we had okay, Vidyanjali, and after Vidyanjali, Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya we had, and one more we had. What was that? It was Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan. Okay, Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan, classes 1 to 8 for science students, so that they can take up science, technology and mathematics, and it would promote innovation through research. It was both in based on inside the classroom and outside the classroom activities. Then we had Vidyanjali school volunteer program, and then we had Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, residential schools for students at upper primary level, and for SCs, STs, minorities, and 75% seats were to book, 25% for girls belonging to below poverty line. Okay, and then we had Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan for up to secondary school education, and RUSA was for Rashtriya Uchchatra Shiksha Abhiyan for state higher education. Okay, so we end it here. Thank you.